I want to say something that might make you feel uncomfortable, but maybe you need to hear it. If you've walked away from the church, if you've been hurt by the people who were supposed to represent God, whether in a big traumatic way or even just by the cold shoulder of a place that was supposed to feel warm, you're not imagining it. You're not alone, and you're not overreacting. There's this question that hangs heavy over a lot of us. Why does God allow abuse to happen in His name? Not just the horrific stuff, although that too. I'm talking about things like spiritual manipulation, coercion, boredom masquerading as holiness. When something meant to be sacred becomes a stage for an ego or a hiding place for sin. Now, the Bible doesn't shy away from messy stories. One of the hardest ones for me is David and Bathsheba. Let me tell you about David. Not the Sunday school David with the slingshot and the giant. No, the grown-up David. The one who had everything. King of Israel. Beloved by God. Successful beyond any measure. The story starts with a simple line. When kings go off to war. But David didn't go off to war. He stayed behind. He should have been leading, but he was comfortable, idle, and maybe a bit bored because he sees a woman, wants her, and takes her. And then to cover it up, he gets her husband killed. When kings go off to war, it says, but David stayed behind. And that's how the rot starts, isn't it? In comfort, in complacency, in power left unchecked. The Hebrew word in this passage meaning he took her, it's the same word used when Eve took the fruit in Eden. It's the language of crossing lines, of taking what isn't yours to take. And Bathsheba? Well, she barely speaks. She's voiceless in this story. And how many people, especially women, have been left voiceless by the church? One woman who felt voiceless but had the courage to speak out in the modern day is Mary Merritt, who spent years trying to make sense of why the priests who abused children in Ireland were protected, moved from parish to parish, and given fresh starts while their victims were silenced. She must have wondered, where was God when they were taking what wasn't theirs? The same place He was when David took Bathsheba, watching, grieving, and preparing to act, because the text says something crucial. What David did displeased the Lord, and it always does. Now, I don't need to list all the scandals. You've seen the headlines. We've dealt with some of them on this channel. The scandals in Ireland, in Canada, in America, Catholic, Protestant, charismatic, liturgical, they've all been touched by scandal, damaged by it. The church has taken what wasn't ours. People's trust, their bodies, their money, and their dignity, all in the name of God. And then covered it up with theology, with coercion, and sometimes with don't speak against the Lord's anointed. Even boredom can be a kind of spiritual abuse. Like, how did some churches manage to make worship boring? You're supposed to be facilitating a meeting with the living God. How have you managed to make that boring? Even the simple joy of worship, how many of us have sat through a service so lifeless, so removed from anything resembling good news, that boredom itself became a form of abuse? Look at what's happened. The Catholic Church in Ireland, and I know I'm picking on the Catholic Church, but that is what's prominent in my context in Ireland. The abuse rocked us to our core. The residential schools in Canada as well. The Protestant megachurches falling apart in America because their pastors thought that they were untouchable. The prosperity gospel crowd living in mansions while their congregations struggle to pay the rent. Mary Merritt's story haunts me. She was locked in, humiliated by those who wore the cross, and her voice was silenced for years, but not forever. Here's what David's story teaches us. God doesn't stay silent forever. Enter Nathan, the prophet, brave man, walking into the king's palace with a story about a rich man who stole a poor man's lamb. David's furious. He says about the man that stole it, he says, that man deserves to die. And Nathan looks him in the eye and says, you're the man. Now, it's not a compliment. He's not saying, you the man, you're a legend. No, he's saying, you're the man that has done great evil. It's not a compliment. It's a moral indictment. God, speaking through Nathan, reminds David of everything he'd been given. The kingdom, the victories, the blessing, none of it earned, all of it entrusted. And then comes the hard part. Forgiveness, yes, but not without consequences. God forgives, yes, but he doesn't erase the consequences. David's child dies, his family fractures, and his kingdom wobbles. Sometimes we want grace to mean clean slates at no cost. But grace doesn't cancel reality. It transforms us through itself, and that includes facing justice. The thing is, God is still sending Nathans, journalists uncovering decades of abuse, survivors finding their voices, ordinary people saying, this isn't right, and I won't stay silent anymore. And if you've been a Nathan, thank you. You've probably paid a price for it. But you're doing the work of God. And sometimes we think loving the church means defending her at all costs. But real love tells the truth. If you're in leadership and you're watching this, I hope that you're uncomfortable. I hope that you're asking hard questions. Because repentance, real repentance, might be your only way forward. And for the rest of us, we need to stop confusing forgiveness with avoiding justice. God forgives, yes, but he doesn't call us to forget. He doesn't ask us to pretend it didn't happen for the sake of unity or moving on. Every denomination has a reckoning coming. No institution is exempt, because the truth is, God expects more from those he has given more to. And if we fail and take what isn't ours, he doesn't just shrug his shoulders and say, boys will be boys. If you've walked away from the church, I don't blame you. Honestly, I nearly did too. But here's what I've learned. It wasn't God who failed you, it was people. Broken, selfish, and sometimes evil people who took his name and used it for their own ends. God hates abuse more than you do. He sees what was done in secret, and he's not indifferent. He's not absent. Sometimes he's just waiting for us to be brave enough to be his Nathans. The church isn't a building or a hierarchy. It's the people who still believe in love, in justice, in speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves. That's the church I want to be part of. Not the one that protects its reputation, but the one that protects its people. Not the one that takes, but the one who gives. Not the one that covers up, but the one who tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts. Grace transforms hearts, but it doesn't erase the need for justice. God can forgive the worst of sins, but that doesn't mean we ignore the consequences or pretend that it didn't happen. So if you've been hurt by the church, drop a comment down below. You're not alone in this. Your story matters, and it deserves to be heard. If you're in leadership, take a hard look. Ask who's been silenced. Ask who needs to be heard. And don't hide behind a collar or a theology, and if you're somewhere in between, be a Nathan. Speak up. Speak gently, but speak up. The God I believe in now is the one who looks at abuse and says, this displeases me. the one who sends prophets to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. The one who's bigger than our buildings, our hierarchies, our carefully crafted reputations. If you're still healing, know this: God sees you. He's not hiding behind an institution that hurt you. He's right there with you, calling it what it is and demanding something better. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We're all still figuring this out together, but at least we're not doing it alone. My name's Jacob, and this might be church.